relaxed, no presentations or anything. And it was nice to meet Dal and see what you guys have been up to, because I hadn't really known too much about Leo. And it was good chatting to Dal and finding out a little bit more.
Yeah, it was nice to get along that event.
Yeah, Barry's a good host who hosts it. So it's always about the host, isn't it? And Barry does a good job, I think, of including everyone and introducing and stuff like that. So it was good, yeah, definitely.
Great turnout, definitely a great turnout on the event.
What is Barry's surname?
18 months, I think, was the previous event to that, because obviously COVID. So it was a great turnout.
Do we know Barry's surname so people can maybe Google him?
Bill Patel. Oh, sorry, Barry Ray.
Yeah, I think he's Canary Connections. I think he's probably best to, you're looking for that networking event.
Cool.
Okay, so we're just about to get started, and we will. There we go. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So we've had a little bit of how we Dal met Bill, and then from there we've managed to bring him on to today. So we'll be hearing from Bill just in a few moments. So straight away, first of all, again, welcome everyone to this weekly broadcast. For those that come almost every week, we don't take you for granted. We're glad you take the time to join us once again. For those then that watch us later on after the live YouTube recording, or who look through our library on YouTube to look at special topics, then again, you're very welcome whenever you're actually watching this. So my name is David Johnson. I'm the CEO of LEOcrowdfunding. We're an equity crowdfunding platform. And my resident co-host, who currently resides in the US, is Mr. John Corey. So hello, John, want to introduce yourself?
Good day, everyone. John Corey, as we just heard, property investor since way back, probably before most of you were born almost. 1982 is when I moved to Silicon Valley. 1983 is when I started in property. And I've been online since 1982, which is actually even stranger. But anyway, we'll get into other things.
Yeah, in terms of Silicon Valley, it's I know John doesn't sort of blow his own trumpet too much, but he did actually work for Steve Jobs for a while at Next. So that was obviously, I'm sure, a very valuable experience for him to be around sort of such a mega businessman as Steve turned out to be. So we host this every week, John and I, and it's just about sharing information, but we also like to bring on guests. It's about what's happening in the market right now. It's not about reading articles, not about just hearing anecdotal people talking about the theory. We want to hear from people who are actually out there building their property business or involved in property. So delighted today to welcome Bill Patel from iOccupy Limited. So again, formally, welcome, Bill. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on today. So hopefully I can share and hopefully get some value. I'll give some value. So
yeah, no, really looking forward to it. I know you've got a really interesting story to tell, so really looking forward to getting into that in a few moments. So first of all, we always do a brief property market update, and it's just a means of making sure that the attendees are aware of perhaps some of the not just the headlines, but perhaps some of the stories behind the headlines or things that are impacting or likely to impact the property market. So this week, I came across this article from the Man Institute. I'm not sure, John, how familiar you are with the sort of the Man Institute, but they obviously do a lot of in-depth analysis of the property market. And yeah, they had a really interesting article, really sort of high level on the UK property market. And some of the things they said I've heard you talk about in the last 4.5 years that I've known you. So in brief, literally they talked about the property fundamentals in the UK are really completely askewed from where prices are right now. Particularly, one interesting thing I wasn't aware of, the size of France and the size of the UK, John. France is 3 times the size and landmass as the UK as opposed to the same population. Mm-hmm. And it talks a lot about, the density of London versus the sparsity, out in the rural areas. So I'm not sure if you've read this article or but just in terms of the fundamentals and even things like that, what's your high-level analysis?
So I haven't read the article at all, and I could just interpret the slide, but everybody else could do the same. A couple observations. So London has been the largest city in Europe for like 230 years. And when we talked about Brexit, we talked about a lot of other events. London has seen quite a few things come and go and still is the massive center that it is. And yeah, there's something to be said for maybe a bigger landmass, less density, but at the same time, the UK as a whole is only like, I think 8 or 9% built out, that the rest of the country is maybe not virgin territory, but is not developed. So it swings around or it skews a lot because, you know, urban center is dense, but rural isn't. And what does all that mean? And it's actually, I think personally, more about where are the jobs, and that's where the people tend to live. So.
Yeah. So in terms of some of the things that affect, you know, house prices in the market, I mean, the report talked about affordability levels are more stretched than at any time in modern history. It talked about obviously the household income. Had some interesting stats on that. So it was a very detailed. I mean, there on the left hand side, there national picture is dire, with median properties rising from 4.5 median household income in '96 to almost 8 times currently. Like, that is significant when it comes to the property fundamentals, I think.
Well, see, here's the funny part. I moved to the UK in '94, and it was closer to 3x then. And the way you applied for a loan is you showed them what you made at your job, and they said 3 times that, that's what we're going to lend you. And you did it almost through a bank branch. And that's how I got my first house. And it's like, I came from the US where I'd been property investing for 10 years. And I'm like, this is weird. How come they don't look at the income versus the monthly expenses and the whole sort of interest plus principal payment? Why just multiply my gross income? So I never believed in this metric. And I would say 4.5 to 8x is what essentially happens when you go from double-digit interest rates to the lowest interest rates in 315 years. That on that level of affordability, it's much more affordable now than it was then.
Yes, and yet I'm going to bring Bill in for his observations next, but that follows on a little bit, John, from the conversation last week about, was it New Zealand, and the whole concept that the lower income parts of society are arguably disadvantaged in the current climate whenever interest rates are low, and in theory it should be the easiest time to buy a property because house prices have gone the way they've gone. Yep. It's skewed. So again, the quote here from Shamez, the British housing model is not serving those who earn at or below the medium incomes. So he kind of feeds into what we talked about last week. So it's interesting for people to understand the world of property. House prices going through the roof at the minute, which is fantastic if you own a property you're trying to sell. But I think people need to be aware of the wider factors and what's happening in the wider society. So Bill, obviously I know you're experienced in property. Any observations on that or any take?
Yeah, it's a hot market at the moment. Definitely. I've just sold my main residential in central Camden in London, and viewings went absolutely bonkers, and we thought we put it up for a high price as well. And we had biggest bid was I think 80k over asking, which is like we didn't even think that was going to happen. So that's just a bit of an indication of what I'm seeing just in the market at the moment. That's the only thing, let's just say, that I'm involved in selling at the moment, and that's what I've seen, on the cold face.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Okay, well, we're going to get in obviously next to John and ask John, and we've obviously got Dal here, our investor portfolio manager, and Dal's going to be watching the Q&A. So if you have any comments, any questions, either on what we've talked about or on anything that John mentions, or when Bill gets into his part, then don't use the chat box, use the Q&A, and Dal will be able to pick that up, and he can put that then to the relevant person. So Dal is on standby. Keep him busy. You get some questions into him, and we'll try and get them answered the best we can. So this week, in terms of Ask John, the question, John, that's been chosen for this week is, given the regular warnings about a crash, should my fear or my worry or doubt or lack of experience stop me getting into the property business? I suppose it really means getting into it now in this current climate. So how would you answer that from a a would-be, suppose I could be a developer or an investor for that matter?
So the lack of experience might cause me a little concern. So people need to try to understand what it is they don't know and start to discover the unknown unknowns, which I know is a bit of a challenge. But when it comes to, there's a old saying that says, when's the best time to invest in property? 5 years ago. What's the second best time to invest in property right now? So in a sense, who cares if you invest right before the crash, if you hold for 100 years? So it's about staying power, cash flow, long-term perspective. If you look at the London point that we made earlier, or I made earlier, it was the largest city in London in Europe for over 220, 230 years. It's generally always desirable. If you were to invest in the Welsh Valleys, the Northeast, a bit of the Northwest, parts of Scotland, which used to have an economic local infrastructure, used to have jobs, and those things imploded because there were minerals or manufacturing related and those businesses closed. Well, I don't care what the overall market's doing in those communities, the demand for housing is out of line because there aren't enough jobs. So buy long term, don't expect to sell anytime soon, and that'll smooth out some of the gaps. If you buying to move in yourself, buy a house that you're pretty comfortable you keep and rent, so you can free up your life if something changes, you need to move, but you can actually just continue to hold the house. You don't have to sell if you're in negative equity or down market, any of these things, as long as it cash flows. And if it doesn't cash flow, you probably shouldn't be buying it anyways. It's sort of like buying a car that you drive it off the lot, it goes down in value immediately, and then you get this boat anchor around your neck, unless that car is helping you produce money. So I would say, with your eyes open, do your homework, look for value, but still don't try to market time. The sector doesn't allow really efficient market timing. You can't get in and out easily. So just buy for 10 years, buy for 20 years, and then a lot of this will go away.
Yeah.
Says the old guy, by the way.
Yeah, with the grey hairs to prove, which we like to comment on from time to time. That's only going to work as long as I don't go grey, John. Once I go grey, then we're both equal.
Well, does that mean you'll become wise?
Maybe wiser, certainly older. But one thing I'll just add to that, and this is probably one of the hardest things for new people in property to understand, that even those of us who like to think ourselves as experts, those of us that have 20 years, that have got the scars on the back from the mistakes we've made, and we've watched the property market rise and fall a couple of times, like even we don't get it right all the time. You can't look at the data that's in front of us now and predict what's going to happen in a month's time or a year's time. Like nobody can do that. So the reality is that in some ways, all of us are like taking a chance on what's happening in the future with property. Some of us may have a little bit more experience, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get it right any more than someone starting out looking at the same data. So I'll just add that in. So, okay, thanks for answering that, John. And we'll get you back obviously next week with another question. So let's get over to our special guest today. So again, Bill, glad to have you here. So introduce yourself, Bill, in terms of your background, how you got into property, and what you've achieved in property to date for us, please.
Cool. Yeah. So I think I started off as an electrician and actually built an electrical contracting business. Started in 2007 and built that up through the recession, funny enough, and sold that in about 2011 because I knew, I'd see the opportunity in property at the time and could see the longer term benefits of being, building a portfolio. So I sold up to my business partner and started my property journey, and basically started to look for the place that had the highest yields because I wanted to buy and hold and build a portfolio. So that happened to be Luton, was closest to sort of the London area that had the highest yields at the time. And so started focusing on there and created at the time, a high-end HMO model. And that wasn't done back 10 years ago. There's a lot of people doing it now. And I look at some of my properties now and think, it'd be nice to have them looking like that, like some of these you see on Instagram now. But we will have turnarounds and we will have to update all of that. But I think they still, hold their own and they still do well. So yeah, started buying small houses, turning them into 6-bed. We've got 6 to sort of 9-bed HMOs, studio-esque, sometimes with en suites, little sinks in the corners and things like that. So we built a portfolio doing that. And then I think probably about 4 years ago, that model broke because the market went up so much and we just couldn't buy at the same prices. And so we got the refinance prices at the end, so then the valuers weren't following the market, as they never do. So we ended up looking for other things to do, and that then turned into, we found bigger deals. So we done sort of like an 80-bed student block that we bought and redeveloped that was sort of derelict, and now currently we have planning permission on a site for 37 studio apartments with ground floor commercial that we're just about to kick off on the development. Unfortunately, Leo aren't funding that one, so maybe another time, David. But yeah, pretty much that's my background, and I've been sort of we've just been growing the business for the last 10 years and growing the portfolio over the last 10 years. Looking forward, for me, I'd like to help more people in property. So that's, I've been looking to grow sort of my online presence on Instagram just to help more people, and carry on growing the portfolio as well. So they're the main things.
Yeah. No, absolutely fantastic. And it's that last comment really that I want to home on first before we talk about some of the lessons you've learned. So obviously myself and John share a passion for education. Our name LEOcrowdfunding is Learn, Earn, Own. John owns Property Fortress, which is all about education. And so what was it about that helping others? What was there anything that was there like a moment you decided I wanted to do that, or what's the motivation behind sort of reaching out and sharing your experience and your knowledge with other people?
Great question. We used to run open days and people used to come up, and whenever we did that, I always felt good afterwards, helping people on their journey. They'd ask questions, and I always find when you're teaching someone, you learn yourself. So there's these questions that pop up and you think, I didn't know that, or I didn't think of it that way. And so even though you sometimes say you're the teacher, you're not really, you're learning at the same time, I find. And so I'm looking at it from both sides. It's a positive, for both people involved. And sort of after 10 years in the business, I wouldn't class myself as an expert, but I've made a lot of mistakes, and I call them school fees. So that have cost along the way, and that's basically, if I can share that with other people and help them on their journey, then fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. That's a really good answer, and I think it gives good insight into your mindset when it comes to not just your own property business, but this concept of helping others, empowering others, sharing knowledge, which is what this webinar is all about, primarily. So I've asked you to pick out a couple of maybe key lessons that you've learned over this past 18 months. I mean, it's been obviously an incredible 18 months of uncertainty and yet huge opportunity for a lot of people, obviously not for everybody. So in terms of business, you've picked a couple of things. So do you want to just talk us through these, maybe just sort of one by one?
Yeah. So basically the first one up there, the letting agency. So as we built our portfolio, we created our own letting agency to run all of the properties and manage all of that. And there's 3 directors in the iOccupy business, and that was my sort of role there. But it was really not my passion. I enjoy property, I enjoy the assets, and creating these great spaces, and providing that for Luton, which hasn't got the best reputation, but I always enjoyed bringing something different and something nice to the market. But the management was really, not, didn't get me excited. And through COVID, we had a few staff members leave, we had some temps in, and it really was the sort of straw that broke the camel's back a little bit. It was like, right, I've had enough of this. And we had a meeting, and it was like, right, do we get a director in to run, that management side, or do we, farm it out to another agency? And the quickest and easiest way was another agency. So they done a sort of takeover, if you like, of our agency. All the units went, like it was one day, all the units went over, all payments then, we would just forward into them once a week. So it literally was like a clean cut. And for me, it probably one of the best decisions I've made over the past 10 years. Unbelievable, because I've got huge amount of time back. I work a day a week on the portfolios. That's managing about 180 units. And it's just, my time is so much more leveraged. And I got into property to do that. And so that's one thing I have to say thank you to COVID for, really. So
that's actually really interesting. I know, Dal, I'll just bring you in here. I know you obviously, before coming and joining us, were involved in portfolio management. So I'm sure you can empathize with some of the challenges of managing a property portfolio, and maybe share some of the frustrations that Bill did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now that one, I think the main reason why I got into property initially was to kind of free up more time and kind of work on other projects. But managing it day to day, it really took out more of my time, more so than anything else. So yeah, exactly what Bill says. I think now he's got that time to kind of look at other projects and work on the real passion of property. So yeah, 100% agree with that.
Yeah. And John, it kind of speaks to you talk regularly about being a passive investor. That's kind of where you're at in your property involvement, because you definitely don't want to be involved in managing your own property.
Well, whether I'm involved in my own property, but I think the interesting point Bill made is try to identify what it is that really floats your boat or ticks your box or gets you going every day. There are hygiene things we have to do. We shower in the morning or whatever we do to sort of take care of the basics. But after that, what is it that gets you excited? And if property management is that thing, which I know it is for a few people, great, and they should be doing it. And for those that's not what floats your boat, or you're not good at detail, you can ask my wife. That's sort of what she does. Yeah, you need to get out of it. You need to find a different way to work and collaborate or joint venture, or however it is you structure things, so that you can play to your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. Not like weaknesses are bad, but like, why waste time becoming mediocre in something when you're already great at something else?
Yeah. But back in 2002 to 2005, myself and Brendan managed about 60 properties for private landlords. And Bill, absolutely delighted the day we gave that business up. It was not for the faint-hearted. So your second point then regarding HMOs and single lets.
Yes. Yeah. So this is something else that we've experienced through COVID. So and it's probably been a reminder for me that diversifying your portfolio. So my portfolio probably consists of about 90% of HMO rooms. So, the other 10% is single lets. Now, through COVID, the single lets actually done very well, and weathered the storm. Our target market with our HMOs got hit really hard. And I think this is very maybe local area specific, speaking to other landlords, because Luton, you had the airport, which is a huge employer. Whoever thought the airport was going to shut down? It's just like bananas. So and that was part of our investment model. Right, we've got the airport really close. We've got these single working professionals. They're coming from all over Europe. They need accommodation. They want nice accommodation. Perfect. We fit that model. That tap got shut off. You've got a population of 200,000 in Luton. 26,000 were employed at the airport. Gone. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was, obviously, we've got a university, the University of Bedfordshire. Again, university students, right, home, working from home, or learning from home, should I say. A lot of them went back to parents. There wasn't the student lifestyle, as we all know. So that was our target market, and both of those got hit really hard through COVID. We normally sit at about 96% occupancy. We jump around 94 to 96% occupancy. We were right down to 60%. Majority of the portfolio is recovered. There's one student element that's recovering at the moment, but it's still low. But it's gone actually crazy the last 2 weeks with students coming back. So with a bit of luck, I think we will be back to pretty much normal by the end of this month, I believe. But yeah, looking back at that, if we'd had say 50% single lets or even a bit more, that really would have made a huge difference to our cash flow. We did get hit quite hard with that, and also that tenant that we are renting to. Also, we had a couple of and we still do have 3 tenants out of the 180 that we're waiting to evict, not paying a penny, with all the government. Who would have knew your notice period is now 6 months on a Section 8, it's absolutely bananas. So, looking back, that's one of the things I learned. Had we had more single lets in our portfolio, which, it's just a focus thing. If we'd have focused not on HMOs, but on single lets, we could have grown that side. So that was one of the big learnings.
Yeah, no, that's again very valuable sort of insight into the experience that you've had with that. So if anyone's any comments they want to make on what Bill's mentioned there, or just have a question, we get it into the Q&A, and Dal can put it to Bill or to any member of the team. So that's one.
I have a comment on that.
Sorry, go ahead, John. Yeah.
I think Bill's highlighting a very good point, which is there's absolutely no way anyone would have said, oh, you should plan on having airports closed. Everybody's going to stay home and no one has to pay rent. We don't stress test our business models like that. And yet something happens. And we call it a black swan if you want. You can call it a bunch of things. And the idea that in the spreadsheet, yeah, but if I push a little harder, I can get that leverage up higher. I can get infinite returns. And like, if we get too focused on maximizing certain numbers in a spreadsheet, rather than like, well, what happens if we do have a flood? What happens if we have a 1 in 200 year event, or 1 in 1,000 year event, or whatever? I mean, COVID actually, it's pretty much every 100 years we have this pandemic. Well, I'm not saying we were due for it. I'm not saying people predicted. There were a few, but don't worry about them. The point is, though, you do need to survive these rough patches, and you need to think about what is it that could really put you at risk, no matter how weird it is, or how much an outlier it is, and how do you survive a little bit longer than your competition and sort of have that staying power. So well done to Bill for sort of pivoting and adjusting, but the idea of planning for stuff that should never happen in your lifetime, you need every now and then to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the school fees comment. So you had to pay a few high school fees in the last 18 months, but you've learned. So the last one then, just sort of briefly in sort of about a minute, one about the banks. I think we all can empathise with this one.
Yeah, quite relevant, I suppose. We've just found we've refinanced on a couple of really small, 1-bed flats sort of thing. I'm not going to name all the banks in it now here, but it's just taken forever, and they've asked for so much information, and it's taken so long. I think we've had to resubmit, our documents 3 times, I want to say, over that period. Unbelievable. And it's like not down to us. Every time they've asked something, right, it's been submitted. Now, has COVID had something to do with that, and have resources been pulled elsewhere? I really don't know, but we're experiencing this not just from one bank. So we've also got development finance going on with the 37 studio units that we're just about to kick off on. And we had agreement from the bank, I want to say about 3 months ago, and we're still not there. We're ready to kick off, and just experiencing that at the moment. I'm sure other people have been quite frustrated with timescales, just really, really awful, worse than back in 2011 when we first started. The banks were really slow then. It seems like a bit of a cycle. It's come back, but worse at the moment. I'm finding anyway.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people are finding that. Again, it's a new factor that just has to be dealt with. We see it in onboarding projects and the frustration that comes with. So, listen, thank you for that. Absolutely brilliant insights, brilliant experiences. And we'll give you a sentence wrap up just in a few minutes when we finish off. So thank you for that. Okay, so just to finish off then, those of you that invested in our Bridge Road project that funded in about 24 hours, I think it's funded. So the shareholder agreement will be out to you, I think, next couple of days for final approval. And so keep a lookout for that one. And then, as I mentioned last week, we are doing a private behind the curtain tranche 2 on Citygate House in Leicester. So that was notified to the investors this week, just by email direct to the investors. We're not putting it on social media. We're not sort of publicizing it. It's just literally a tranche 2. There were those who missed tranche 1 and have contacted us saying they do want to invest in it. So it'll be early next week. It will open for probably about 3 days. And then those that want to invest can, and then it will close again. But we did raise 204,000 on the first tranche, and there'll be a project update on this and all our projects. The investor updates are due probably the end of this week, beginning of next week. So any projects you've invested in, you'll get your monthly investor update very shortly. Those that are here on a regular basis know that you can speak to John and myself. We can do a call with you, and if you feel there's some value in having us help you out with your business, help you out in some aspect of your business, structuring a deal, fundraising, brand building, all of that, we're open to that conversation. You can reach out to John on social media, or there are my details there. So next week is not someone called XXXXXXX. That's not their name, but I haven't had final confirmation. So I don't want to say until we have them absolutely 100% confirmed. But I do anticipate that you'll be able to obviously share that very quickly. And again, it'll be another interesting guest like it was this week. So Bill, I'll give you a last sentence before we give John a last sentence, then we're done.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's nice to meet you guys as well. If someone wants to get in contact with me, I'm quite a lot on Instagram, so I'm Bill Patel Property. So you can catch me on Instagram, drop me a message, follow, see what I'm up to. As I said, I'm looking to give back a little bit, and and connect with people who want a bit of a hand on their journey. So I've been there, done that in a specific area, like building a portfolio. So thanks for having me on, David.
No, 100%. I think maybe in a few months' time, if we sometimes focus on either certain regions or sometimes certain property niches. So it may be that when we're dealing with either your region or a niche that you're involved in, we can get you back on again and deep dive into that. Yeah. So it's been a really easy day for Dal. No questions. He's been able just to sit there and enjoy the conversation. So John, any last minute sentences before we wrap up?
I'm all good. It was good listening to Bill and his experience.
Thanks, John.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. So have a great rest of Thursday into Friday and a great weekend, and we'll see you all again next Thursday, 10 o'clock for our weekly broadcast.